What if the biggest mistake you're making as a parent has nothing to do with discipline, screen time limits, or whether you packed organic snacks? What if the thing quietly damaging your relationship with your kid is something you'd never even think to put on a parenting checklist? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your child isn't just wondering if you love them. They already assume you do. What they're actually trying to figure out, every single day, in 100 tiny ways you probably don't even notice, is whether you actually like them. And that's a completely different question. Love comes standard. It's built into the biology of the whole thing. You don't get credit for loving your kid any more than you get credit for breathing, but like is optional. Like means you choose their company. Like means when they walk into the room, something in you lights up rather than braces for impact. And here's the brutal reality most parents aren't ready to hear. Many kids grow up being loved completely, but liked rarely. And they feel every bit of that difference. So how does a child figure out whether they're liked or just tolerated? They run tests. Constantly. Not consciously, not with clipboards, but instinctively. Every story they tell you is a test. Every drawing they shove in your face is a test. Every question they ask about something completely random at completely the wrong time is a test. And while you're just trying to get through Tuesday, they're collecting data points. Here's one of the most common ways parents fail these tests without ever realizing it. Your kid starts talking to you while you're on your phone. You give them the half nod, the occasional 𝗯𝗵𝗶𝘀, and you keep scrolling. They stop talking. You don't notice. That's a moment that registers. Kids are remarkably perceptive about where your attention actually lives. They notice that you respond to a work message within seconds but haven't looked at the drawing on the fridge in 3 days. They notice that you can spend 40 minutes watching videos of strangers doing things online, but seem restless after 2 minutes of their story. Research consistently shows that parental phone use during time with kids reduces the quality of interaction and makes parents less responsive. And kids translate that data into a very specific conclusion about their own importance. Now let's talk about enthusiasm, because this one is sneaky. You're present. Phone is down. You're nodding. But your kid can still feel you sleepwalking through their reality. They tell you they discovered something fascinating, and you say that S nice in the same tone you'd use to acknowledge that someone sneezed nearby. They are enthusiasm detectives. They know the difference between genuine interest and the polite performance of interest. Real curiosity asks follow-up questions. It leans in. It remembers what was said last week and circles back. The absence of that kind of engaged attention sends a message louder than anything you say directly. But there's something even more damaging than passive disengagement. It's the comparison trap. Your kid quit something, and you sigh. That sigh gets filed away. You mention someone else's kid's achievement in a certain tone, and your child hears exactly what you meant even if you didn't mean anything at all. Kids build internal catalogs of these moments. Every sideways comparison to a cousin who plays instruments or a neighbor's kid who got into a prestigious program becomes evidence in a case they ray building against themselves. Research confirms that when parents habitually compare their children to others, it directly erodes self-worth. The child doesn't hear motivation. They hear that they are a disappointing substitute for someone better. So what actually works? What builds the kind of relationship where your adult child calls you just because they want to talk? Start by creating what you could call a judgment-free zone. Not a space without rules, but a space where your kid can say something and not immediately trigger a lecture, a lesson, or a look of barely contained concern. Kids are running constant risk assessments about what they can share with you. The ones who feel genuinely liked have a parent they trust to just receive information without turning every sentence into a teachable moment. That trust is built slowly, in small moments where you simply listen without fixing. Then there's the power of celebrating what's genuinely weird about your kid. Not the resume-worthy achievements, but the specific, strange, hilarious things that make them who they are. When you acknowledge those things with real appreciation rather than tolerant amusement, you're telling them that their particular version of human is not just acceptable but actually worth celebrating. That registers differently than any generic praise you can offer. There's also something incredibly powerful about flipping the expertise dynamic. You've been the authority figure their entire life. But when you genuinely ask your kid to teach you something they know, when you let yourself be the student, something shifts in how they see themselves. They get to experience being competent, being the smart one in the room. That feeling of being interesting enough to be someone's teacher builds something in a child that generic praise simply cannot replicate. And underneath all of it, there is one ingredient that nothing else can replace: time. Not carefully scheduled quality time with activities and intentions. Just quantity time. Boring, unstructured, wandering conversation time. The kind where nothing special happens except that you're both there. Research shows that the amount of time parents spend with their children directly correlates to how much family warmth children experience. Closeness doesn't happen in highlights. It happens in the accumulated weight of ordinary moments. Here's what all of this builds toward, and this is the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. When a child consistently feels liked by their parent, not just loved but genuinely enjoyed, they start liking themselves. Not in an inflated way, but in a grounded, I'm worth someone's attention and time kind of way. You become the first mirror that shows them their own value. When you laugh at their joke for real, they learn they're funny. When you ask their opinion and actually listen, they learn their perspective matters. When you choose to be present with them, they learn they are worth choosing. That internal belief becomes their baseline. It shapes how they move through friendships, relationships, careers, and eventually how they parent their own kids someday. Longitudinal research spanning decades in dozens of countries consistently finds that the quality of the parent-child relationship predicts adult well-being, security in relationships, and overall life satisfaction in ways that almost nothing else can match. And here's the part that hits hardest. Whether your grown child calls you regularly or shows up only on mandatory occasions comes down almost entirely to this. Do they believe you actually enjoy their company? Because once they're adults, the obligation is over. The only thing that keeps that relationship close is genuine mutual liking. The birthday calls and random texts and we should get together conversations, those only happen when someone believes the other person truly wants them around. Every single day, in moments that feel completely insignificant, you are writing the future of that relationship. The phone you put down during the story. The follow-up question you ask even though you don't fully understand what they're explaining. The weird achievement you celebrate even though it won't impress anyone. The time you let them be the expert. These aren't small moments. They're the whole story. Your kid isn't asking you to care about rocks or fictional sheep or the internal politics of their friend group. They're asking you to care about the person who cares about those things. And when you actually do, when you make the shift from loving out of obligation to genuinely liking who your kid is becoming, something unexpected happens. Parenting stops feeling like management and starts feeling like one of the more interesting relationships in your life. Because you're not just raising a child, you're getting to know a person. And if you pay attention, they might just turn out to be someone you'd choose to know even if you aren't related.